full attention to every moment, is my desire and my pleasure. Attention costs no money. Your only investment is training. That's another advantage of being a warrior. The secret of happiness, you see, is not found in seeking more, but in developing the capacity to enjoy less. I felt content listening to the spell he wove. There were no complications, no pressing searches, no desperate enterprises that had to be done. Socrates showed me the treasure trove of wealth within the body. Socrates must have noticed me daydreaming, because suddenly he grabbed me under the arms, picked me up, and threw me straight up into the air, so high, my head almost hit the ceiling. When I came down, he slowed my descent, setting me back down on my feet. I just want to make sure I have your attention for this next part. What time is it? Shaken by my brief flight, I responded, it's right on the garage clock, 2:35. Wrong. The time always was, is, and always will be now. Now is the time. The time is now. Is it clear? Well, yeah, it's clear. Where are we? There in the gas station office. Say, didn't we play this game a long time ago? Yes, we did, and what you learned is that the only thing you know absolutely is that you're here, wherever here may be. From now on, whenever your attention begins to drift off to other times and places, I want you to snap back. Remember, the time is now, and the place is here. Just then, a college student burst into the office, dragging a friend with him. I couldn't believe it, he said to his friend, pointing to Socrates, then speaking to him. I was walking by on the street, when I glanced over here, and saw you throw that guy to the ceiling. Who are you, anyway? It looked as if Socrates was about to blow his cover. He looked at the student blankly, then laughed. Oh, Soc laughed again. Oh, that's good. No, we were just exercising to pass the time. Dan here is a gymnast, aren't you, Dan? I nodded. The student's friend said he remembered me. He'd watched a couple of gymnastics meets. Soc's story was becoming credible. We have a little trampoline behind the desk there. Socrates went behind the desk, where, to my complete stupefaction, he demonstrated the non-existent mini trampoline so well I began to believe it was behind the desk. Jumping higher and higher until he could almost reach the ceiling, Soc then bounced lower, bobbing up and down, and finally stopped, bowing. I clapped. Confused but satisfied, they left. I ran around to the other side of the desk. There was, of course, no trampoline. I laughed hysterically. Socrates, you're incredible, he said, never one for false modesty. By this time the sky was showing the faint light of dawn as Socrates and I got ready to leave. Zipping up my jacket, I felt as if it was a symbolic dawn for me. Walking home, I thought of the changes that were showing up, not so much on the outside, but on the inside. I felt a new clarity about where my path lay and what my priorities were. As Soc had demanded of me long ago, I'd finally released my expectation that the world could fulfill me. Therefore my disappointments had vanished too. I would continue to do whatever was necessary to live in the everyday world, of course, but on my own conditions. I was starting to feel free. My relationship with Socrates had changed too. For one thing, I had fewer illusions to defend. If he called me a jackass, I could only laugh, because I knew that by his standards at least, he was right. And he rarely frightened me anymore. As I passed Herrick Hospital on my walk home, a hand grasped my shoulder, and I slipped instinctively under it, like a cat that didn't want to be patted. Turning, saw a grinning Socrates. Ah, you're not such a nervous fish anymore, are you? What are you doing here, Soc? Going for a walk? Well, it's great to have you along. We walked in silence for a block or two, then he asked, what time is it? Oh, it's about, then I caught myself, about now. And where are we? Here. He said nothing else, and I felt like talking, so I told him about my new feelings of freedom, my plans for the future. What time is it? He asked. Now, sighed. You don't have to keep. Where are we? He asked innocently. Here. But, don't listen to me, he interrupted. Stay in the present. You can do nothing to change the past, and the future will never come exactly as you plan or hope for. There have never been past warriors, nor will there be future ones either. The warrior is here now. Your sorrow, your fear and anger, regret, and guilt. Your envy and plans and cravings live only in the past, or in the future. Hold on, Socrates. I distinctly remember being angry in the present. Not so, he said. What you mean is that you acted angry in a present moment. This is natural. Action is always in the present, because it is an expression of the body, which can only exist in the present. But the mind, you see, is like a phantom, and, in fact, never exists in the present. Its only power over you is to draw your attention out of the present. I bent over to tie my shoe, when I felt something touch my temples. I finished tying my shoe and stood up, finding myself standing alone in a musty old attic without windows. In the dim light I discerned a couple of old trunks, shaped like vertical coffins, in the corner of the room. I felt very frightened all at once, especially when I realized that, in the stillness of the air, I could hear nothing at all, as if all sound was muffled by the stale dead air. Taking a tentative step, I noticed that I was standing within a pentacle, five-pointed star, painted in brownish red, on the floor. I looked closer. The brownish red color was from dried, or drying, blood. Behind me I heard a growling laugh, so sickening, so horrifying that I had to swallow the rising metallic taste in my mouth. Reflexively, I turned to face a leprous, misshapen beast. It breathed in my face and the sickeningly sweet stench of the long dead hit me full force. Its grotesque cheeks pulled back to reveal black fangs. Then it spoke. "Come to me, E." I felt impelled to obey, but my instincts held. I stayed put. It roared with fury. "My children, take him." The trunks in the corner began moving slowly toward me, and opened to reveal loathsome, decaying human corpses, which stepped out and advanced steadily. I gyrated wildly within the pentacle, seeking a place to run, when the attic door opened behind me, and a young woman of about 19 stumbled into the room, and fell just outside the pentacle. The door remained ajar, and a shaft of light fell through. She was beautiful, dressed in white. She moaned, as if hurt, and said in a faraway voice, "Help me, please help me." Her eyes were tearfully pleading, yet held a promise of gratitude, reward, and unquenchable desire. I looked at the advancing figures. I looked at the woman, and at the door. Then the feeling came to me. Stay where you are. The pentacle is the present moment. There, you're safe. The demon and his attendants are the past. The door is the future. Beware. Just then, the girl moaned again, and rolled over on her back. Her dress slid up one leg, almost to her waist. She reached out to me pleading, tempting, "Help me." Drank with desire, I lunged out of the pentacle. The woman snarled at me, showing blood-red fangs. The demon and his entourage yelped in triumph and leaped toward me. I dove for the pentacle. Huddled on the sidewalk, shaking, I looked up at Socrates. "If you are sufficiently rested now, would you like to continue?" he said to me, as some early morning joggers ran by with amused looks on their faces. "Do you have to scare me half to death every time you want to make a point?" I screeched. "I should say so," he replied, "when it is a very important point." After a few moments' silence I asked sheepishly, "You wouldn't have that girl's phone number, would you?" Socrates slapped his forehead and looked to the heavens. "I will presume you did get the point of that little melodrama."